considering a request for proposals for food service operations for the Warren County Jail.
So,
Yes.
And yes?
We have a resolution authorizing the opt-in of additional opioid class action settlements against 6 remnant defendants and authorizing the county administrator or deputy county administrator to sign all documents relative to opting in said actions and participation in settlement.
So this was reviewed by Assistant Prosecutor Nice, and these are just additional opioids. There's 6 remnant, they're smaller firms that have been put into the suit, and so this just authorizes us to opt in and then follow up with all signatures as those dollars come in.
so moved.
Second.
And yes?
I have a resolution entering into cooperative agreement with the Atrium Medical Center Foundation relative to the purchase of a CareFlight helicopter serving Warren County.
I am recusing myself from any discussion and a vote.
Okay,
Or
and,
conflict.
so what is the specific dollar amount again?
It's 600,000 total. It's divided over 3 years, so 200,000 times 3 years.
Okay, and are other jurisdictions involved with this as well? Do we know?
They are going out to other jurisdictions to do that, but in their presentation, I think you were one of the first ones that they came to, if I'm
And
not mistaken.
I know, and then we were the one that they felt if we did something, other people would then do something as well.
They did say that, yes.
Okay, I don't have any problem with this. We've discussed the amount.
Yeah, we've discussed it. I think it's important, public safety. I think they gave statistics relative to the number of Warren County residents whose lives have literally been saved by the air operation, so I'll make a motion to approve that.
And I will second it, and why don't we call the roll on that?
Mr. Grossman,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes, I think you asked for her initial abstention.
Mrs. Jones.
She abstains.
I abstain, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a resolution accepting the radio system upgrade proposal form from Motorola Solutions on behalf of Warren County Technology Services.
So moved.
Yes.
And yes?
I have a resolution entering into contract with Naira Paving for the 2026 roadway asphalt restoration services.
So moved.
Second.
And yes?
I have a resolution modifying section 9.11 of the rules and regulations of the Warren County Water and Sewer Department.
This is just the annual, specifically up in Carlisle and Hunter areas, where they will reset on an annualized basis the fees to connect. So they use the inflation rates and those types of items, so this year's fee will be set at $1,230.
So moved.
Yeah, second, yes.
And yes?
I have a resolution authorizing the county administrator to sign a letter of arrangement with the auditor of state relative to OPERS Sensa data.
So I'm curious about this.
I think we might have been randomly picked, because this is the first time that I've seen this.
So what kind of data is being turned?
I think they're just, my understanding is that they just want to look at the data that we are, from an audit perspective, that we are sending the correct information and the correct dollar amounts to OPERS for our employees.
Okay, that's what I would assume, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
All right, yeah, I approve that. May I make a motion to do that?
And yes.
And yes?
And I have a resolution approving the emergency replacement of parts for the programmable logic controller at the Lower Little Miami wastewater treatment plant.
Second and yes.
Yes? Do we have some add-ons?
I
Yeah,
do have.
Just one, I think. is what it is.
We've got 2 now. One
Okay,
came in
so-
last minute.
okay,
So
so-
I've got 2 add-ons. The first resolution is hiring multiple candidates as emergency communications operators within the Warren County Emergency Services Department.
So moved.
Yep, yes.
And yes?
And the final item I have is approving the reclassification of Shantae Tarver from Protective Services Caseworker 1 to Protective Services Caseworker 2 within the Warren County Department of Job and Family Services, Children's Services Division.
And so moved.
And so why is this an add-on?
They wanted to get it in before our next meeting, which is 2 weeks from today,
And so when was the deadline though for this agenda?
Friday at 11.
Okay, so this came in after 11 on Friday?
Yes, it came in yesterday afternoon.
So I think we just, if we want to limit the number of add-ons, I'm not suggesting we do, and sometimes this stuff happens, but a reclassification for a position seems to me is something that you all should have by 11 o'clock on Friday. So I have no problem with it.
Okay.
But
And that's all I have.
What did we just do?
we reclassified an employee.
Okay. And we're in agreement with that. We don't have a problem.
Yes, I didn't have a problem with
All
that.
right.
No, but I think that is something that Crystal has we all have the ability to make sure with that comment that we let folks know that there are extenuating circumstances at times, but a reclassification as an example is not one of them.
Yeah, so I don't have any problem with the reclassification, but Friday at 11 for our next week's meeting, for those types of things without extenuating circumstances, so that we know that they've been reviewed by the administration, I think makes sense. Okay, anything else here before we go to our work session? All right, so we have a work session to discuss the state auditor's report concerning the Agricultural Society relative to the Warren County Fairground property. And I know, Tom, Commissioner Grossman, you had requested the work session, so do you want to kind of start things off?
Sure, and first, to start it off, I'd like to give a brief chronology that I think is relevant ultimately to the audit, but precedes it, and that is a chronology of our fairgrounds, because this ultimately is all about the fairgrounds. So in 2009, there was a constitutional amendment in Ohio that permitted casino gambling in 4 cities. In 2011, there was another law in Ohio that permitted lottery video terminals at horse tracks and racinos. In December 2013, harness racing ended at our fairground here in Lebanon. In February 2014, harness racing started at the Racino in Warren County, as you know, where it all is there in Monroe. Then, during 2016, I became a commissioner in January 2015. We had 3 meetings that discussed the future of the fairgrounds. And those meetings are all reflected in meeting minutes of March 10th, 2016, November 2016, I'm sorry, the 3rd meeting actually was in March of 2017. And I'm not going to go through this in any detail, but what occurred during these meetings, we discussed what do we do with the fairground? Does it stay there? Does it move? The harness racing was ended. What do we do with the grandstand that at the time was 70 years old and not in a good condition? And ultimately, certain decisions were made, and those decisions, after much discussion, which included, do we move the fairground? Do we improve the fairground? What do we do with it? And we decided ultimately to keep the fair there. We consulted with the Agricultural Society, we consulted with 4-H, we consulted with Lebanon, and we ultimately decided to keep it there. And then we led a contract in April of 2017 to demolish the grandstand. And we then engaged in April of 2017 as well, 1 week later, for architectural engineering design services for a new event center. And in October 2017, we entered into or approved of a contract with Conger Construction to build the event center. Now, ultimately, the port did that, but we spent over $3 million on that event center. So at this point, we had crossed up. So there's a term called cross the Rubicon. We had decided to stay at the fairgrounds. We had decided to refurbish it and to try to update it, make it a more beautiful area, and we started to spend a lot of money on it. And there was a lot of discussion about whether we would do this or whether it was appropriate to keep it there, but we decided to do that. Unbeknownst to us, and we did not know this, until way later. But prior to June of 2024, the city of Lebanon started to look at having a master plan to develop the fairground and to purchase it, I believe. That was not known by the commissioners. In June 14th of 2024, Joshua Martin of MS Consultants provided Scott Brunka, the administrator of the city manager of Lebanon, with a proposal for a fairground master plan. Now, at some point, there was a meeting involving, a first meeting involving our administrator, Martin Russell. His recollection is that this occurred in August of 2024, where he was invited to a meeting by Gene Steiner that ultimately was attended by the fairground president at the time and Scott Brunka. They did not, maybe you can describe just briefly what that was?
I think actually there were two meetings. There was one that was in June that wasn't on my calendar that I think was sort of impromptu that they asked me to come to.
And was that the same date? Was that June 14th?
According to Scott Brunka, it was.
Okay, and that's the very same date that Joshua Martin of MS Consultants sent an email to Scott Brunka with a proposal for Fairgrounds Master Plan. Okay, go ahead.
It was a conversation that was had had the folks that you talked about, just talking about the potential of the future of the fairgrounds, and they were just looking to sit there and see if there are other options that they could do to develop and look at more of the future possibilities of it.
Okay, so then the next date of importance, and this is when I became familiar with something was going on, was in October of 2024, and two things happened essentially on the same date. One, there was an announcement by the Agricultural Society leadership that all horse boarding operations were to cease on December 1 of 2024, and all the horses were to be removed by that date. In addition, I learned that Lebanon Council was going to take a tour of the fairgrounds. And I spoke with Vice Mayor, who's current Vice Mayor, Brad Lamoureux, about that fact. And then subsequent to that, and asked, I wondered, why are you taking a tour? Well, what's going on with this? And I asked him, are you interested in doing something with the fairground? They indicated they just wanted to take a tour, weren't sure what they were into. I talked at that point, I called Mayor Messer about it and asked him if he knew anything about it, and he indicated that he did not, at least to me at that point. On November 5th, 2024, we had a meeting of this commission, and at that time, leadership of the Agricultural Society came to us and we discussed the order to have horse boarding operations cease, and we discussed the financial situation of the fairgrounds and difficulties that they were having with this and management of the fairground and concerns that we had related to that. In March of 14th of 2025, Mr. Brunka sent Martin Russell the email, it was an attachment, of June 14th, 2024, which revealed their interest, the MS Consultants Master Plan. But I don't believe Martin realized that that was from June of 2024. Did you at the time?
I did not.
Right, I didn't think you did. All right, so then the next major thing was on March 27th, 2025, Mark Messer, Mayor of Lebanon, and Scott Brunka sent a letter of inquiry to the commissioners suggesting that perhaps Lebanon would purchase the fairgrounds. And then after that, I can't tell you what we did exactly. There are certain things that happened that were public knowledge ultimately, but there were, subsequent to that, 5 dates that this commission held executive sessions on possible property acquisition, including one on April 1st, 2025, that was immediately after the receipt of the March 27th, 2025 letter from Mayor Messer and Mr. Brunka. So then of course, we also knew during this period of time that there were concerns about the finances at the fairground. And ultimately, we received, and this was certified for release on March 5th, 2026, a report of an audit of the Auditor of Ohio, Keith Faber, on the fairgrounds and its management and finances I've thoroughly reviewed that, and that's what we're gonna now focus on today, which I wanted to hear from you all about. But as a background to this, I wanted to give that chronology to let you all understand what happened preceding this. Now, I've not gone into detail on any of this. I can go into more detail, but it's not necessary to set up this audit report. So I'd like to hear, and I'm gonna talk about each one of these findings, but I wanna offer it to you all at the Ag Society to give us your take on some of this and what's going on, and also with regard to the fairground issues.
So who's here to speak on behalf of the Agricultural Society?
I'm gonna hand out you guys some stuff.
I'm
Sure.
sorry.
I'm gonna hand you guys some stuff out.
Okay.
That's okay. So today with me, I have my executive team. There's also several other board members in the back.
So, sir, can
Sorry.
I have you come to
Yep.
the microphone? There are people watching, so if you could just say your name and address for the record, and then as you introduce other people, to
So-
just do so at the mic.
Chris Lutmer, 1140 Oregonia Road, Lebanon, Ohio.
Thank you. Now you can introduce who you have here.
Ron Mag, Vice President. Amy Brewer, Board Member, Executive Committee Member. Garrett Guard, Executive Committee Member, Board Member as well. You want to bring them all up at the same time? Sorry, a little nervous.
No need to be nervous.
Yeah, we're actually pretty friendly here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark. Do I have to give the oath?
You don't have to do that.
No.
We're not
Okay.
testing.
Just at a work session. you
Okay,
don't have-
okay,
Yeah,
I'm just making sure.
but sometimes we do act in a judicial function where we do take, swear witnesses.
Well,
Unless you want to, I mean.
the several other meetings I was in, everybody's like doing this and what?
Ms.
Yeah,
Lutmer,
that's
on
when we have an official judicial hearing.
Good morning, Commissioners, staff, and members of the public. Thank you for calling this important meeting and for your continued interest in the Warren County Fairgrounds and the Agricultural Society. I'm Chris Lutmer, the President of the Warren County Agricultural Society, elected in August 2025 alongside our new Executive Committee following the clear mandate from our membership last July. We appreciate the opportunity to speak first and to provide the transparent, straightforward explanation you requested about where we've been and where we're going. For many years, the fairgrounds served our community well, but we also faced real challenges: deferred maintenance, financial vulnerabilities, and audit findings that tested public trust. Those difficult chapters are part of our history, and we will not sugarcoat them. However, last July, our members delivered a decisive mandate to change. In August 2025, new leadership took office with a clear commitment: strong financial stewardship, full accountability, and transforming the county-owned fairgrounds into a thriving year-round community asset for 4-H, harness racing, the annual fair, and every Warren County resident. We share your goal of transparency and responsible management. Today, we will show you how we are making the best better. I'll now turn it over to Vice President Ron Mag for additional context in our recent progress.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for having us here. And I am Ron Mag. I am the Vice President of the Warren County Agricultural Society. Am I supposed to give my address or anything like that?
Yes, please.
2075 South State Route 123, Lebanon, Ohio. And as Chris had mentioned, we have prepared a packet for each of you outlining our actions that we've taken since August of 2025, including the 2026 budget overview, key policies that we're working on, and the updated bylaws from the meeting of last evening. These materials demonstrate concrete steps that's taken under this new leadership. We did inherit significant challenges, including those detailed in the March 5th, 2026 audit, but we have addressed them directly and decisively. Our previous office manager implemented major improvements to record keeping and reconciliation through 2025. And we have built upon this foundation for stronger internal controls. I will now pass it on to Garrett Gard, who would talk about the specific responses to the audit findings.
I'm Garrett Gard. My address is 2829 State Route 48 North in Lebanon. Thank you, Ron. Commissioners, regarding the 2019 through 2023 financial audit that identified findings for recovery of more than $19,000 related to late utility and credit card payments. The current board voted to hold all named individuals accountable and pursue full recovery of those funds. Following that vote, the former board treasurer resigned after stating he was not equipped for the role, requesting that the board absolve him of debts. We did not. The office manager also resigned, citing concerns about potential future findings. We anticipate additional resignations in the future as well as a result of this. These changes reflect the higher standards of accountability our new leadership has implemented. We are actively recruiting a qualified replacement treasurer, a role that does not have to be a board member per our bylaws, and expect to complete that process within the next 2 weeks. We have strengthened the payment procedures and internal controls to ensure these issues do not reoccur, and we will continue to cooperate fully with the ongoing 2024-2025 audit. I now turn it over to Amy Brewer to speak about our vision for the future of the fairgrounds.
Amy Brewer, 23 North Mechanic Street, Lebanon, Ohio. Thank you, commissioners and staff, for giving me the opportunity to speak with you all this morning. We recognize this conversation also involves the broader future of the 94-acre fairground property. In February 2026, our board clearly voted to reject the proposed term sheet because we believe these grounds remain a vital community asset best managed by the Agriculture Society. Upon our new leadership, we are actively increasing year-round utilization and revenue generation, so the fairgrounds can serve as the highest and best use for our agriculture heritage. The fair is still the crown jewel. 6 days of tradition, pride, and economic impact, but it is far more than 1 week a year. Our barns, arenas, everything with 4-H programs, harness horse racing, community festivals, education events, weddings, and much more. We respect Ohio Revised Code 1711.26 and look forward to the prosecutor's guidance as we continue open, driven conversation and dialogue with each and every one of you. With that foundation, we are now ready to walk through our full presentation, where we've been, the decisions we've taken since August 2025, and our current stability, and our clear, exciting path forward. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and now moving on to our presentation. Chris Lutton.
Thanks, Amy. Commissioners, let's talk honestly about where we've been, because you can't chart a better course without first acknowledging the road we've traveled. The Warren County Agricultural Society is one of the oldest and most cherished institutions in our county. Our society was formally organized in December of 1849. We held our first fair in September of 1850. And by 1852, we had settled on these 94 acres that have been home to the Warren County's agricultural heart ever since. For more than 175 years, the fairgrounds has been the place where 4-H kids show their projects, families make memories, harness horses thunder down the track, and our community celebrates everything that makes Warren County special. That legacy is real, and it's worth protecting. But over the past several years, that legacy was put at serious risk. The last 7 years tells a story of instability and turnover at the top. From August 2019 through August 2024, we had the same executive director, Gene Steiner, overseeing operations for 5 straight years. During that same stretch, we saw 4 different presidents, 4 different vice presidents, 5 different treasurers. That kind of constant churn at the board level, paired with long-term staff continuity in the executive director's office, created exactly the kind of environment where problems could and did go unaddressed. The result was gross mismanagement. Bills went unpaid for months. Utility accounts fell into the arrears. Credit card balances piled up. Fairgrounds became, quite frankly, a financial and operational dumpster fire. What should have been a routine 2-year financial audit covering 2019 to 2020 ballooned into a 4+ year ordeal that finally wrapped up on March 5th, 2026. That delay alone should tell you how deep the disarray had become. And here's the most important point I want to make today. This new leadership is not a continuation of those previous administrations. We were not handpicked by the old guard. We were not part of the prior board majority. We were elected in 2025, August of 2025, by the membership in a clear mandate election because the people who care most about this fair said enough. They wanted accountability. They wanted transparency. They wanted a clean break. And that is exactly what you have in front of you today. 4 members of the executive committee who took office with one mission: fix what is broken and make the best better. We inherited the mess. We did not create it. And we are not here to defend it. We are here to own it, correct it, and move forward. Stronger, more transparent, and more accountable than ever before. That, commissioners, is where we've been. Now let me hand things over to Vice President Mag, who will walk you through exactly how we have already begun turning the page. Ron?
Thank you, Chris. And again, Commissioners, thank you very much for having us. And as I stated earlier, I am Ron Mag. I'm Vice President of the Warren County Agricultural Society. And like Amy Brewer, I was elected to the board last August 2025, following a clear mandate for change from the Agricultural Society. Together with President Chris Lutmer, Senator Jones, I forgot for a second there. Secretary Arla Tennant-Hill, and the rest of the executive committee, we bring something this public body has desperately needed: fresh eyes and decades of combined experience from the public service sector. This experience matters. Public accountability, transparent governance, and sound financial stewardship are not just ideas to us. They are standards that we live by in our professional careers, and they're now standards that we're applying here in the Agricultural Society. Our entire membership team is fully committed to one goal: making Warren County Agricultural Society and the fairgrounds the best that they can be. For our 4-H members, for harness racing, for the annual fair, and for every resident of Warren County. You can already see these commitments in action. From August 2025 through March 2026, we have had 14 regular and special meetings, nearly double the traditional 8 meetings that would have occurred at this point. We're not showing up once a month. We're working diligently to address challenges we inherited and to build a stronger foundation for the future. Last night, we had a bylaws meeting to review and refine updates to our governance documents. The version is included in your packet. That was the draft prior to last night's session. We will make the final, you receive the final update copy as soon as it's printed. In addition, our bylaws committee has been working hard. I lost myself here, I can't see. To to develop comprehensive new policy and procedure manual, specifically designed to address and comply with the 10 findings with the recent audit. These are not superficial changes. These are substantive reforms and will prevent problems from the past ever occurring again. We also want to acknowledge Secretary Arla Tannehill, who unfortunately cannot be with us today because her brother is gravely ill. Arla has made dramatic improvements in our quality and professionalism in our meeting minutes and record keeping. Her contributions behind the scene have been outstanding, and we appreciate her dedication during these difficult personal times. Finally, Commissioners, we want to be fully transparent with you with one additional item. A fellow board member had his father, Joseph Fuller III, file a lawsuit against President Lutmer and Secretary Tannehill personally. The complaint raises allegations under the Open Meeting Act, conflict of interest provisions, and relative matters. We take every legal matter seriously. Our attorneys are handling the defense. This is a nothing burger, clearly generated to make noise, to distract, and create discord in the board. It will be resolved appropriately through the legal system, and we will not detract from our important work which we were elected to do. Commissioners, this is a leadership team that has rolled up its sleeves. We inherited a difficult situation. We are not making excuses. We're making progress. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Garrett Gard, who will provide specific details on how we have directly and decisively responded to the audit findings. Thank you again. We do appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ron. Commissioners, I want to speak to you directly about how this new executive committee has responded to the audit findings we have inherited. First, let's be precise about the vote the board took. The board did not have to vote to hold anyone accountable. The Ohio Attorney General's office handles findings for recovery as a matter of law. What the board did vote on was whether to absolve individuals named in the findings of their personal obligations to repay the money. The former treasurer who resigned specifically asked the board to absolve him of those debts. We refused. The board voted to hold every named individual responsible for paying what they owe. The decision sent a clear message. Under this leadership, there will be no passing the buck to the Agricultural Society or to Warren County taxpayers. Following the vote, the former treasurer resigned. The office manager also resigned, citing concerns about potentially being named in the ongoing 2024-2025 audit. We anticipate there will be additional findings for recovery in that audit as well, and those individuals will be held accountable in exactly the same way. Since taking office, we have made tangible progress cleaning up the financial house we inherited. As of today, the credit card balance is paid in full, and all of the City of Lebanon electric bills are current. We have hired a new experienced bookkeeper who is currently recreating the entire 2024 financial records in QuickBooks. The previous administration left the financial information in such disarray, this work was necessary to get an accurate picture. We are working closely with the state auditor's office to provide them with accurate, reliable information. Once the bookkeeper completes the 2025 reconstruction, she will move on to make the necessary corrections in the 2025 numbers. As you see in the packet, our accounts payable statement shows a balance owed to the City of Lebanon for electric. That is a result of misclassified payments by the former office manager, who did not have extensive QuickBooks or bookkeeping experience and was unable to correct the error. We have already addressed the actual invoices. Those bills are paid. The bookkeeper will clean up the classification so our records reflect reality. Additionally, this executive committee only became aware on Monday, March 9th, of a separate reporting issue with the Ohio Department of Agriculture. The office manager had been discussing this matter with the ODA since January 27th of 2026. But she never brought it to the attention of the executive committee. It was not until David Moran of the ODA called President Lutmer directly that we learned about it. The office manager had stopped responding to the ODA's request for clarification and chose instead to communicate the issue only with board members who were not in leadership positions. That lack of transparency and chain of command subordination is precisely why these staffing changes, while difficult, will ultimately make the organization stronger. We anticipate additional staffing transitions in the coming weeks. However, I'm pleased to report that we already have received more than 120 applicants for the office manager position. We will be conducting interviews next week and hope to have a strong new hire in place before April 15th. Finally, we are providing you with our year-to-date financial statements in the packet. Please note that our new bookkeeper is still reviewing these statements and will make any necessary adjustments once she completes the 2024 reconstruction. We want you to have the most accurate information possible and will keep you updated on that work as it progresses. Commissioners, we inherited a difficult situation, but we are facing it head-on, honestly, urgently, and with accountability. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Amy Brewer, who will speak to her vision for the future of the fairgrounds and how we are working on making the best better.
Thanks, Garrett. Commissioners, we have spoken very honestly about where we've been. Now let's share a little bit about the exciting things and where we are going. The community is energized and the momentum is real. Since our new leadership took office in August 2025, we've seen a surge of support from those who want to be a part of the solution. Just recently, the Friends of the Warren County Fair was officially established as a non-profit group dedicated to raising funds for building improvements, facility upgrades, and long-term enhancements of the fairgrounds. These dedicated volunteers have already reached out and learned from successful models in other counties. They've met with the Wayne County Friends of the Fair, an organization that is immensely successful in fundraising. Pickaway County Friends of the Fair, which donated more than $90,000 to their agriculture society. With that same spirit in Warren County, and with the dedicated support of this board, the future, I believe, is bright. The new Friends group and strong leadership, we are well positioned to make meaningful improvements. We are already seeing exciting initiatives take shape. Community members are actively exploring great opportunities, including installing solar panels on our buildings to significantly reduce electric costs. We continue our strong partnership with the Warren County Probation Department, where young offenders perform valuable work on the fairgrounds. Also working on partnerships with the Warren County Career Center, Future Repairs, and bringing our young people in to make a difference. The enthusiasm is showing up in dollars already. The past 2 weeks, it says $26,000 in sponsorships. We've already raised right now $28,000 for our Warren County Fair. Most importantly, these fairgrounds are more than just a one-week event in July. This is a year-round community asset. The place stays busy all the time with 4-H activities, harness horse training, community festivals, and I could go on and on and on. To give you a sense of the true utilization, City of Lebanon and Placer Software in 2024 recorded over 196,000 individuals visited the fairgrounds. That's powerful evidence that these 94 acres are so important for all of us. Under our new leadership, we continue to increase utilization even further, generating substantial revenue and ensuring the fairgrounds remain the highest and best use for agricultural heritage while serving our residents. We respect Ohio Revised Code 1711-26. Look forward to continued data-driven dialogue with each and every one of you. Commissioners, with an energized community, new funding partnerships, proactive grant exploration, and a board fully accountable to progress, we continue the Warren County Agricultural Society to a path going forward in the best direction possible. We are making the best for our next generations. Thank you for the opportunity for all of us to speak to you quite honestly, sharing our views and our vision. And now we open any questions up to the team that is presented to you this evening, and look forward to continued conversation. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I have some questions that I'd like to ask you, and I don't know which one would like to address these. But I think it's relevant, particularly, we all know, because we've all read this audit report. And when I read it, I thought this was going to be more serious than it is. I'm not saying that there aren't serious findings here, but I'd like to talk about them individually and why there were findings where money needed to be returned by certain individuals. So and I want to summarize this, but perhaps you guys can, or one of you can speak to each of these. It appears that the primary problem that they found was that, and there were internal control issues, there was deficiencies in documentation, there were these questions, but ultimately, the problems related to certain people who had credit cards, or there was credit charges, and the credit cards were not paid on time, resulting in, I guess, penalties and interest. And then there were also utility payments that were not made on time either, resulting in charges relating to the failure to pay on time. And it is these charges that resulted in certain individuals being held accountable for gross negligence and not paying those on time. Now, am I accurately stating this? Yes. Is this what basically happened? And who was responsible for that? I know that they mentioned Gene Steiner and some others, and you've talked about them. Are all those people that are mentioned in this report with their findings where they need to return money that you've talked about relating to failure to pay credit card bills on time and failure to pay utilities on time, are any of those individuals still with the Agricultural Society or in its employ?
They are not, Mr. Commissioner.
Please come to the, oh, you have a microphone.
Yeah.
I didn't see that, I'm sorry, but
They are not at this time.
Are any of the people that were responsible for the deficiencies in reporting or documentation, are any of them still with the Agricultural Society?
No, they are not.
Okay.
I don't believe.
And now, by the way, I'm not, the report mentions them by name, but I'm not going to do that today. But I take it that, that you've already said they're gone, and you've recognized the issues, and then there's also and by the way, I think it might be helpful to mention the dollar amounts that are at issue here. So there are various different amounts that are having to be repaid. Do you know how much those are for each individual? And you don't have to mention the individual, but how much does each individual have to repay to, and the repayment is being made ultimately to the Agricultural Society itself, and the Agricultural Society has already paid up all of the credit card bills that weren't paid on time and the utility charges that were not paid on time, correct?
Yes, correct.
And so the reimbursement is to the Ag Society itself, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and all right, so can you tell me how much money that is?
On each individual,
Yes, please.
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, it's in the report.
I was saying, it's in the report, and
I
you
know,
guys
it's in
can
the
see, if you guys
report.
have the report, you can see it.
It's
Yes.
not a huge amount by any individual, by what I consider the huge amount. So, for example, one of the, with regard to the society and individual cardholders failing to maintain documentation, corroborate stated expenses, et cetera, the unsupported expenditures, they said there was unsupported expenditures of $453.55. So one of the things that is interesting about this report is oftentimes with an audit report, somebody has done something wrong where they're actually taking money that they shouldn't take and haven't documented. And I think that's this category, where there was charges made that were not accounted for properly and were not necessarily documented as proper charges to the Ag Society, correct?
Correct.
And the total amount, the public needs to know this, the total amount of undocumented, possible inappropriate charges are $453.55.
That's correct.
Okay. So, I was thinking that somebody was stealing a lot of money or taking a lot, this is the category where that could be. But it's not very much. And has that all been paid back?
I don't know at this point if it
Okay.
has. When our last meeting, I believe we were down to about $200, I believe.
Because it's also potentially just, you couldn't find receipts.
That's it, yeah, correct.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not necessarily someone took the money or it's
Correct.
unauthorized.
Right.
It could be as simple as you couldn't find the receipts.
And that's exactly right, Commissioner Young is right about that, because it isn't necessarily that the money was spent on the wrong thing, that there's no documentation of it. That's what, but it's not, I'm not gonna say it's completely de minimis, because for me, $453 is, okay, it's some money, but, it's not in felony territory. Now, the other thing that they found, for example, and this is a total of $8,448, relates to the late fees and interest charges relating to certain of the credit cards. Is that right? I think that's correct.
If you have it in front of you, I do not have that.
Yeah,
in front of me.
I think that's correct. And it names all the individuals, which I'm not naming, and which ones they were responsible for. And this is fair to pay 2 credit card accounts on 33 occasions from 2019 to 2023 on time. And ultimately, the amounts were paid, but it is, what the auditor found is that there were interest charges and late fees that should be the responsibility of the individuals at the Ag Society that are no longer there that failed to make those payments.
Correct.
All right. Another amount was $11,323.64, where there were 3 individuals who failed to make timely utility payments that they were responsible to make. And there were late fees and disconnect fees, and it is the late fees and the disconnect fees that are at issue, and for which there was gross negligence found by the auditor on the individuals, 3 individuals that failed to pay that in the total amount of $11,323.64. I think that's it. And do you know of anything in subsequent years, which are under audit now, is that right?
Correct.
Where something like this could also have arisen, because the people that were involved with this continued on into 2024 and 2025 to some extent, is that right?
2024, yes.
Okay.
2025, we had a different treasurer and a different office manager. So they, again, you can see how it keeps going, and they did their best to get stuff cleaned up as quickly as possible.
And at this point in time, are all credit cards being paid for?
100%, 100%.
Currently, you're not incurring interest charges,
No,
late fees?
we have, in fact, I do not have the information in front of me, but I believe all of 25 was our previous office manager that just resigned, and Pastor did a fantastic job on getting the books, paying the bills on time, making sure they were paid on time. And it, as you guys look at the paperwork, and I never realized it until I took this position, on the electric bills. There's like 6 electric bills, or 7, that come all in. Well, if they didn't pay the electric bills that month, there was 7 late charges, not just 1. That adds up really fast.
So at this point in time, are the utility payments being made timely?
100%, yes.
And I know too, that because because Lebanon actually has its own separate, they provide the utilities for the electric,
Correct.
don't they?
Yes.
So you actually, this isn't Duke or something like that, this is being paid to Lebanon. And I know that Lebanon frequently, with some people, gives them discounts or waives for fees or something like that. Do they do that for the Ag Society and the fairgrounds?
So we have in the past got the $15,000 credit. You put it in, it's like a small grant through the city. The last couple years, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't look. I do know in 2026, they denied our application.
Okay. So, one of the concerns I believe that my fellow commissioners have had, and I've had, is whether or not you have righted this ship with proper, management team and leadership. It appears that you have, you've completely changed it. And that started as of August of 2025, is that what I've heard from this?
Correct, yes.
And that's in your very first tab, you give us some information about that in your leadership timeline chart. And then you also have tried to correct the deficiencies in accounting and with regard to documentation and making sure things are being properly recorded and documented, so we didn't have this problem of not having invoices or something like that, correct?
Correct.
All right, another thing that I want to briefly address is the horse boarding situation. Because this was my business, and it's still my business, and I still have two farms where I'm operating horse boarding. The farm I grew up on and another farm that's right next door. So I was really familiar, I've been doing this for decades, and we had up to 70 horses in our stabling operation, which is not nearly as much as at this fairgrounds. But when they ordered the boarding to cease by December 1 of the things we learned was that they weren't collecting rent from all the horse boarders. They were collecting things in cash sometimes, and they weren't probably recording it. They were not putting, requiring people to pay. And it almost seemed to me that whoever was doing this, it might even have been intentional. I'm not saying that it was, but it was almost like there was purposeful mismanagement of this. And then there was huge amounts of money spent on manure removal, and I don't know who was doing that exactly. So I'm going to ask you now, what's happened with your boarding operation? Are you on top of your rent payments? Are you making sure that they're current? Because they were told like they were like an arrears $50,000 in October of 2024. What's happened with that?
So I'm looking for the page where I had it, and it's here. Let me
Is it in
find
this
it.
booklet?
Yes.
Towards the back, 3 or 4 pages from here.
And bear with me just a second
Yeah,
because
sure, take your time.
there's another one
There's
here.
no rush.
Let's see my 20.
But while you're looking for that, so,
It's behind financial statements. About the 4th or 6th page back.
Well,
They
that-
are aging summary report,
But there's an April 1.
and that's what that is.
The April, did you find the April 1?
Yeah.
Commissioner Young? Okay. So you can see that there's, I don't know why, maybe mine's missing that page.
I can tell you what it is. There's $280 over 91 days, $310, 61 to 90 days, and 31 to 60 days, $1,055.
So $3,000.
Yeah, so, yeah, and current is almost 42,000 out of the total of almost 46,000.
all right, so I will tell you, having run a boarding operation for many, many years, that's not an unusual amount. You always have somebody here or there that's not making payment, and they usually come forward and they make the payments. So that, to me, that proves that you have righted that ship.
We did it in 25. And I don't have it with me here again. You can go back and look, but we have in the minutes, we have set a precedence on If you're over 60 days, you're gonna get a letter from the attorney. And then make sure that whatever we have to do, stop racing, whatever, that we gotta make sure they pay.
Well, I mean, and this was the thing that I didn't understand when this came up to us in October, and that we had a meeting on November 5th where the Agricultural Society came in and there was a presentation, we discussed this, and they admitted they were not enforcing their rental agreements, they were not enforcing the terms of them, and they were not taking any action against anyone. And if somebody gets something for free for month after month after month, they tend to think that they can just do that. Now, I also think that there was a problem with some people actually paying and they're not properly recording that they were paying. I understood that that was the case. But it's gross negligence to allow month after month after month of arrearages and then collect an arrearage of it was like $50,000. So that was something that concerned me, and obviously you've corrected it, and that's commendable. And the new management has obviously gotten on top of that. So with that said, what is it you're thinking that there, in the new audit, have you had any discussions with the auditors from the state and Keith Faber's office that concern the current audit going forward, and have they raised any issues with you where you know that something is of concern to them? So for example, typically when they're doing an audit, they're asking you for a bunch of information. And then after they get the information, they come back and they may ask you for more information. In those kinds of discussions, have they alerted you to any difficulties?
But they just now started on the 24-25. They are just now starting, so not at this moment, no.
Okay, all right. Do you think, based upon your review and the fact that you've gone through this carefully, I take it you've gone through those records that are currently being audited with care. Have you done that?
I can't hardly see some days because we've went over the numbers so many times.
Right. So you're trying to correct your reporting, your documentation, your systems, you're doing all of that.
Yes.
So in your review, are you seeing any major issues?
No. And if you go back and look at some of these that we put in, our previous office manager, for not being educated in QuickBooks, did a fantastic job. But there are several things, misclassed, you might say. So our new bookkeeper that we've got in here just in the last month is going over and making sure everything is reclassed in the proper ways. That way, when it does become audited, everything just checks out, period.
So now I'd like to talk about, there was a recent resignation from someone, is that right?
The board treasurer
Yes.
or the
The
office
board
manager?
treasurer.
Yes.
Okay, can you please explain what happened there? And is that someone that is part of the new management team that now is resigning for a reason?
No, it was old management. He was, sorry, trying to catch up here. He was the treasurer in 23, 24, under the executive director. Then we had another board member that was treasurer last year. Now, the guy that was in 24 was now back for 25. And he just kind of just threw his hands up and said, hey, I really don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, so I want to make sure, because someone might suggest that that individual is resigning because he may believe there are current problems that are not being corrected. Is that the issue, or is it the issue that he sees that you refused as a body to basically indemnify your prior people who had findings where they had to have recovery? And he sees that you refuse to indemnify them, and he might have,
God bless
excuse
you.
me, he might have thought, geez, I don't know what I might do wrong, but I see that I'm not getting indemnified by this group, and I'm taking off. Or is he told you, I think there are problems that you're not addressing, and I don't like what you're doing? Sometimes people resign because they don't like something that's
I
going
think
on.
just indemnified that the public spoke at our meeting, and they made it very clear what they wanted.
Okay. I mean, you have a right to indemnify people And Bruce, under Ohio law, is there a law that the Ohio law stipulates that people are indemnified if they're not at fault? I mean, I think that there is an Ohio law that speaks to it when it comes to, you know, corporations or directors and things like that, but there isn't anything for this body?
Not for findings for recovery.
Okay, but I'm doing something, I'm asking a different question, and that is, if there's some issue, because I think the recovery occurred because they had a finding of gross negligence. In other words, they had it wasn't mere negligence, it was a higher level of that. And I think for innocent mistakes, it's appropriate to indemnify people. But I think because of it being gross negligence, you all decided there was no indemnity, and they decided that they should return the money. There was a penalty there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that, when you're talking about the late bills and all that, apparently you all have cash flow that goes up and down, correct?
Well, when you add lots of things together, Commissioner Young, that's what happens, right? Poor management of
I
invoices.
mean, you
coming in.
basically got 4 business operations. Sometimes your cash flow is higher than others,
So,
correct?
and in the wintertime, things get pretty slim because there's not a lot of stuff going on.
So is it, when we're talking about, you know, again, I despise the fact we have any audit findings in this county. I don't like that at all. Sometimes mistakes happen, sometimes it is malfeasance. Sometimes it's just people don't understand what they're doing. And would you say that from what I understand, and again, I want to reiterate, when I talked to the auditor yesterday, there is no findings of anyone stole any money or took any money. That's off the table. That correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That it is a practice of prior boards, and you made it crystal clear that you are a new sheriffs in town, new administration, you got all new deputies, it's a new administration. That it's not just this past administration, but for decades, has the Fair Board not operated on this peaks and valleys to where sometimes they're in the rears of paying credit card bills and paying the utility bills, and that they had that is just the way they did business, is when they got money, then they paid late fees and interest, and that's, whether it was right or wrong, that's not like a new thing, is what I understand.
We've had previous audits before. I mean, I wasn't on the board back 15, whatever else, and we had audits and they passed. Before that, we had audits and they passed. This is a very tough, and that meeting, I'm gonna tell you, when we had the audit, the audit special meeting, we called it, we started at 6 or 7 o'clock. That meeting went to 11 o'clock at night, and we still had probably 50 people in the public. People were there, and it's very tough because these people in the positions, they were doing their best, they thought, right? And you're not allowed to pay late fees in a public position, period. And it's really tough. The good thing is there was nobody that stole any money, nobody. And that's fantastic, because that's everybody for the last year, ever since the horse thing came out in November 24, where's all the money going? Somebody's put it in their pocket, somebody. And in a 4-year period, there's only $200. Well, if somebody loses one credit card receipt in 4 years, that'll do it. That's it. So, you know, this is a tough situation. But when the public speaks of what they want, you gotta do what they want. And they made it clear that they wanted those people that did not get the bills paid on time to pay the money back, period.
Well, they wanted to pay with penalty and interest.
Yes.
They wanted to pay the late fees. They weren't asking them to pay the underlying bills.
And sorry, yes, the penalties and late fees, yes.
All right, so I'd like to ask you about the lawsuit that was mentioned. So I take it there's a lawsuit that's been filed against you and another person on the Agricultural Society board?
Yes.
What's the nature of that lawsuit?
If you wanna pull it up on the docket,
That's okay, I can do that, and I have done that, but I was just for the
Okay.
public, can you just briefly describe what they're alleging?
can't remember really much about Arla, but several different cases where I was a conflict of interest. I had a board meeting, and I canceled it. We didn't have it, just an email. And, they said we had had a board meeting instead in secrecy. We did not. Just several cases of that, just trying to make a mess.
All right. So basically, it was making claims that you were either canceling or not holding meetings or not being transparent about meetings or something like that. Is that right?
Yes,
All right. I take it that you are transparent about your meetings. Do you announce meetings when you have them?
yes,
And so I take it that you have meetings that are open to the public as well?
correct. All of our meetings are open to the public.
Okay. And how about your board? Does your board ever meet just as a board?
I guess rephrase it.
But you have a meeting where you just meet as a board with just the board invited? Or do you always have a public meeting when your board meets?
So, yeah, so if we go in executive session, and a couple of these special meetings we had, we did go into executive session. So public was there, and we said, hey, guys, we're going to now enter an executive session. They were asked to step out, and we would get them when executive session
And
closed.
just like we have a lawyer here from the prosecutor's office that represents us, do you have a lawyer that represents your agricultural society board?
So we did hire counsel to represent us in the city, in their lease, and what they were looking for, and she represented us. So there were several cases in those special meetings that she was either there in person or via video from her office to go over just what we were working on.
All right, do you have any?
Commissioner Young, do you have any questions?
Well, so,
Excuse me.
tell me about, so essentially the Ag Society really, and tell me your philosophical view of, per the, as Mayor Brewer cites, under the revised code, you are charged with running the county fair.
Yes.
But yet, are you required to run this county fair grounds, or is that just something that through decades has morphed into the Ag Society runs the entire
No,
fairgrounds?
we would run the entire fairgrounds year round. Yeah. And it's not morphed into that. That's what it's been, and that's what it is.
Well, correct, but is that what the law
Yes.
prescribes?
Yes. Yes. Mhm.
And do you need all 92 acres to run the fair?
We do.
You do? Okay. Would you say that you have essentially 4 business units that you guys kind of oversee as the way, as you've described them? I kind of see that you have running the fair, right, is one thing. Then you have other events that take place at the fairgrounds, right? That's a separate
Yes.
potential revenue source. You have the event center, correct, that you
Yes.
oversee that?
Yep.
And then finally, you have the horse boarding operation.
Yes.
Do you track each one of those basic business units from we've talked a lot about your finances, from a profit and loss standpoint?
So that's what we're working on right now, as we got to make sure that every single thing everything is correct. Everything, again, as far as in our QuickBooks, making sure everything is in the right category.
I think what Commissioner Young is asking you is, do you keep separate, in terms of the event center, you know how much you earn and what your expenses are for the event center. You know how much your receipts are and your expenses are perhaps for the horse boarding operation. You know how much your receipts are for the 1 week fair we hold and how the expenses. And so I think, Commissioner Young can speak for himself, but I think what he may be wondering is, one, you keep records so you can tell that, and second, if you do, and you have something that is consistently not making money, then the issue is, why would you continue to do that? Is it necessary to do that?
So that, and again, I'm sorry, I'm trying to move forward and back up at the same time on your question. Right now, and the horsemen would like to operate on their own, correct? And people say, well, the horsemen, if they're losing money, that's no good. It's no good. Well, right now, we've talked to a few people, we wanna see and be able to dial out their electric bill and see what they are costing, the whole thing. That way we know.
Are they separately metered?
They are not, and that's what we're looking at
Even
right
though you
now.
have 6 or 7 meters,
What's that?
even though there's 6 or 7 meters
Correct,
there.
right, so.
Which is something I was involved with 20 years ago, of how do we not know?
So with all the stuff, technology these days, there's lots of different things, and I've got one guy that's ready to come down and basically give us a presentation on putting one on every single barn, because we've got to know the usage, right? These horsemen, great guys, but if they're costing us money, that's not good, right? So
Costing a lot of money just in removing manure, so I don't know how it,
correct.
you know, I mean, I think Commissioner Young's question is the right one. It's certainly the one that I had, is that I appreciate seeing your 26 budget. This is the first time without having to public records request to the Ohio Department of Agriculture to actually see a budget. But that budget, I think, what it doesn't do is look at the business enterprises that are on there. And I think that that is necessary for us as the owner to be able to determine what actually is land that needs to be used for the fair and what doesn't. And so I can appreciate there may be business enterprises on there that don't make revenues, and there are other reasons to continue to do that. But there's, based on what you've provided today, there's just no way for me to understand what expenses should be attributed to the horse boarding operation, except for the removal of manure, that's pretty obvious, versus rentals of the various, it seems like to me, what was a relatively new facility, the amount of rentals that come in on that seems very, very low. And so, I don't understand kind of as business units what that is, and I think that is necessary to be able to understand.
Well, I think that's what we're driving towards, though, is once we right the ship, let's break it down in each.
So has the current board voted on this budget that you provided us today?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And so, and has the board approved the the 25, fiscal year 25 P&L and the financial statements? So the board has voted in favor of all of that, has accepted that?
25, we have 25, yes.
Yes, but she's looking over, putting all the numbers back in to make sure everything is correct.
Right, but we put them for file back in November when we close our fiscal year.
Okay. But you don't know if the board has voted to
Well, we
approve that?
We had to.
yeah, we will have to.
But the accountant that we have hired is putting all the numbers back together again to make sure as going forward, because this is a new board. We started in August. We want to right the ship, and we're working on that. But you don't write it overnight. We're making the changes from going forward. Everything that you see and every budget that you see will be accurate.
Yeah.
I think they're
I hear-
accurate. I think they're accurate now.
Yeah.
However,
I mean, to me, it's when the board approves the financial statements, then I'm looking at something that's been board approved. The board is validating and so what I'm just trying to get at is, has the board approved the financial statements so that as you are showing them today, they are accurate?
Yes, yes.
So,
Yes.
so the board has approved those, and this existing board has approved the 26 budget that's in
Yes.
here.
Yes.
Okay. So I looked at the list of policies that you're talking about in this creation of a policy and procedural manual, and your hope is to have this completed, approved by your new board at the April meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
What I don't see on here of this list is a conflict of interest policy. Do you have a conflict of interest party?
Yes, it is in the bylaws.
It's in the bylaws.
It's in the bylaws.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
but that will not be a part of your policy and procedure, or you're saying this is simply a financial policy and procedure manual?
We're just going off kind of what the auditor,
They're addressing
Expense.
the issues, the findings, and
Okay.
each of the new policies address each
Each
of the
one.
specific 10 findings. Not findings for recovery, those are separate,
it's
findings.
just their findings, period. So if,
May I ask a question about the conflict of interest?
yes,
So, do you permit your own board members to contract now with you and to pay them to, for example, I know that you're not doing this now because I know the person who's been disposing of your manure, but do you prohibit a board member from contracting as like an independent contractor to provide services at the fairgrounds?
so this whole conflict of interest thing came up, and I'll just use myself for example. And it's in my lawsuit. I have spread the track material for the track for years. And whether I'm on the board or not, I've done it. And I'm the only one in the area that has the machine to do it. I didn't change anything because I was on the board or off the board, just the service I provide, period. Now, when all this stuff blew up and everybody's doing all this stuff and with conflict of interest and you can't do this and you can't do that, I stepped away because it doesn't look good. Even though I might have been doing it fairly, right? It doesn't look good on me. So even though I'm doing it for, I guess what it is, I have to step away because if people don't like it, even though I'm doing it for, a very reasonable price and I'm the only one, people would rather pay 10 times the price because, well, it's a conflict of interest because Chris is doing it.
Well, I think that you can perform services if you don't vote on it, if you get multiple bids, if you're the best price,
Correct.
you recuse yourself from anything. I think that is possible to do. And I think that is done, but it could, in light of the past with this society and the operations, it might not be wise to do that.
I think it's something that, like the bylaws, we're putting things in place and documenting things and in board meetings, just like you guys do all the time. Shannon earlier, Mrs. Commissioner Jones, with the helicopter, you abstained, because you needed to stay out of that. Same way with this. If Mr. Mag is doing a process and he can do it, and he's the lowest bid, as long as he doesn't do anything, and it's all in the documented minutes, what's wrong with that? Nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that you did the track stuff, so I didn't ask that because I had some particular question
No,
about,
it's okay. I
about you
just-
personally. But I think having a conflict of interest policy and addressing right out front and all members signing that, just like we do at the beginning of the year, is just good board practice. And so it allows people to win, especially in this type of business. It doesn't surprise me that those that would be interested in volunteering to be on the fair board, have some interest in the fair. But I think having a policy for which all members are annually required to sign, and there are good practices around that, just ensures that the expenditures that are spent are done so prudently. So I'm not suggesting you have a conflict of interest, although I'm hearing from you now that there's a lawsuit that is alleging that there's a conflict of interest.
So-
But in terms of wanting to right the ship, even the perception of a conflict of interest can create division. And so while I totally appreciate what it is you all are saying, that this is a new board and a new day, I know that there is a lot of division within the members of, it's not just righting the ship, there are deep divides, because I've been hearing a lot from people who are your constituents. So, you know, I think that I would definitely, and I appreciate if it's in your proposed,
So,
bylaw, changes. So these, they're identified as draft,
yep.
so,
If you want to go to Article 10.1, 10.2, page 12. 10.2 is conflict of interest.
so I see that's in your draft there. But you've not historically had a form or.
2025, we did. That was when we first started it. Yes.
Well, so I guess one of the bottom line things that, as a takeaway, that's important, I think, for me as a commissioner, I think it's also for my commission colleagues, is that you have budgeted out, you understand what you think your income is gonna be, and you have an idea of what your expenses are gonna be. And typically, anybody that's running, and you're running a business, you're running a fairground business that has multiple different aspects that generate revenue and expenditures. So are you assuring yourself, because the way in which, things gonna happen that are unexpected during a year, but there are certain things, there are certain expenditures that you have control over. It's more difficult sometimes to control your revenue. But if the revenue is not coming in the way you think it is, do you have the ability to adjust your expenses so that you still are in the black?
Yes, we have made sure those numbers are moderate, you might say. So if there's ups and downs, we can work through those.
Because I think the concern here, and the explanation, when you read this audit report, there's a response to it. And the response basically was this, correct me if I'm wrong, basically the response is, sorry, we didn't pay the things on time, we didn't have the money. That's basically the excuse. We didn't pay the credit card because we didn't have the money. We didn't pay the utility bills on time because we didn't have the money. And if you don't have the money, I can see why that's a problem. You gotta go borrow the money or whatever. So in the future, to not have that, and everybody that runs a business understands this problem. And sometimes you do pay a credit card bill by just paying the minimum amount, and then you don't have a penalty, a late fee, but you got an interest charge. And the credit card interest charges are huge because they compound every day, and they go back to the time when the thing was due, and then they can, every money you spend after that you continue to charge, you get compounded interest on that at an extremely high rate.
Yeah, I think we all,
Okay.
people get that, but the essence of a loan, are you familiar with, did the board try to get a loan? I was told the board tried to get a bank note and tried to get a loan in the past, but there was an issue with, obviously, the financial reporting, the history of the finances, and then they actually wanted people to sign personally on that, which is one of the reasons why a loan wasn't given, which means we don't have any money in our account, all of a sudden these problems happen. But I think that all goes back to a history of financial oversight that perhaps wasn't best in class, I'll put it that way. And some of my issues with the board in the past, just since you all and the mayor talked about being transparent, if I'm being transparent, that this has been, in 21 years of doing this, the fairgrounds and working with the board has been perhaps the biggest thorn in this commission's side, honestly, that it's been a problem from almost the outset in 2005 of not having money. We're autonomous, we run this thing, but oh, we can't pay for this. Give us more money, give us money from the cell tower, give us money from this. Then my beloved colleague, Pat South, had a vision for a event center, and she had talked about it for a long time, and that had been discussed starting probably 2006 or 7. We still didn't have a great working relationship with the board at that time. We kept asking for oversight. We owned the property, and the board essentially said, we don't need to give it to you. We don't have to do that. Bruce, is that accurate?
Yes.
And it got to the point where I actually threatened the board to turn off your electric, that I need oversight, I need to understand this. So this has not always been a, you're talking about the history of the board, this has not always been a rosy situation with the Board of Commissioners and the Ag Society, to the point of I literally threatened to turn off the electric because the board at that time was being unresponsive. Leap forward, Commissioner Grossman did a nice job of a timeline. The one thing he left out in 2009 with maintenance that had been a serious issue from the board and the lack of ongoing maintenance, we had a fire that killed 43 horses and, more importantly, 2 individuals. I'll never forget driving there when the barn was still smoldering. So there's been a lot that's gone on at the fairgrounds, including the death of 2 individuals, which is just tragic, and it weighs heavily on me. Then leap forward to, we didn't have enough money, we want this event center. What happened after that? Our board stepped up once again to the Agricultural Society, and when the Racino issue was being passed and moved forward, they actually asked for our support. And the owners at the time, the operators, had deferred maintenance, and for whatever reason, and I hate to use the word I ever because my colleagues do so much more in certain areas than I ever thought about doing, so we each individually, but this was prior to their time, and this happened to fall on me way back then, that I negotiated a $500,000 settlement from the previous owners for deferred maintenance that they knew they hadn't gotten. So here's $500,000 that comes in. And then I went to Delaware North and Churchill Downs, which were going to be the new operators of the Racino, and said, we need serious upgrades at the track that you're now abandoning. We need a substantial payment. And he's like, Commissioner, normally people are paying us to come to their communities. And I said, welcome to Warren County. We want money from you. We got $3 million from them as a result of that conversation. That's the money we then took and built the event center that Pat South had a vision for forever, which again, we turn over operations to the Ag Society. And part of that deal was this Board of Commissioners was supposed to be getting residual income back from that to the tune of 20%, which I don't think we've ever seen a check. So all of those things lead up to this era of problematic behavior, a failing business model. Somebody wrote me a letter and said that they remembered back in 2011 when one of the other times the board came in public, and I said, your horse boarding operation has a failed business model. It's not sustainable. And that's essentially what has happened over the last decade, that other boards have all said, we're losing money on this, they're not paying on that. They play games with, oh, they're in the rears on this payment, and so now the owner of the horse changes over to somebody else. Is that, that stuff has gone on for a long time, and all of a sudden it looks nice and rosy, but people still aren't paying their rents. So those are the things why I'm talking about moving forward, that you are now the board president, that you have 4 distinct categories of business operations, I think at least, that I identified, and are they all viable? And if they're not, are you changing the business operation to make sure that they are viable? Because taxpayers of this county have given almost $9 million in support of this 92 acres over the last however many, couple of decades. And on an ongoing basis, it's over $200,000 a year that we support your operation. So about 10% of your 26 budget is coming directly from the things that we on a discretionary basis have offered up to support the fair. So honestly, this board's been the biggest supporter, even though we own it, we've been the biggest supporter of the fairgrounds because we adamantly believe in the 4-H program. We think agriculture, it's our second leading industry, used to be our #1 industry forever, It's critically important to the financial health. I'm a financial guy. I'm all about the finances of the county and the economic conditions in the county. The economic conditions of this county, in large part, are tied to our agriculture community. It's critically important, and the next generation of farmers to this entire board is super important to us, which is why the 4-H is so important, and having a place for them to have a junior fair and all that type of stuff. It's so important to us, but then when we get bogged down with what we see as nonsense from the Ag Society, failure to comply, failure to come up with financials, mismanagement here, mismanagement there, failure to make improvements at the fairgrounds, those things weigh on us. Do you understand where we're coming from?
Yeah, 100%. That's why we're here.
Commissioner Young, understand what you're saying. That was in the past. You're talking about the past. This is the future. You have a new board. And we have future thinking ideas. You're talking about the 4-H fair. Well, there's other things to do. I found out in Allegheny, Pennsylvania, they do a STEM fair. Makes $300,000 a year. I think they do something similar at Ohio State. I have been talking with people on the fair board, on the Agricultural Society that have some knowledge. We want to do something different other than let's say another fair, a STEM fair. We will partner with industry. We will partner with colleges. We will partner with medical schools. Let the kids that have a different issue have a place and then bring in more money to this fair. We're going to make this successful. You said no one partnered with you in the past. We will partner with you. We will ask every one of you to come to the fair. Come and see the fair. Call us in anytime you want. We will talk to you. We want to be your partners. This is a 175-year-old tradition. The people in Warren County like it. We will right the ship. We're working. I tell you what, we are working. I don't sleep at night, and I don't even like that because I want that fair to stay there.
We appreciate your board, and because Representative Mag, how much are you getting paid to be on that board?
Oh, well, let's see, if they doubled it, it would still be zero.
Zero, that's what I thought. It's a volunteer board, and we appreciate you, the mayor, the other members of the board doing this because it is out of public service. So we do appreciate that, and just by the sheer number of meetings you're having, again, not everybody agrees with the direction you're going. I mean, and that's a fact. But you at least are putting in hours and hours of effort of trying to do something. And again, from my standpoint, I'm not going to gloss over, the history of what's gone on because this board has been committed to this. Again, the way I see it, that's a 94-acre asset of the entire county.
For everybody. And you didn't mention the $250,000 grant that we gave in 2022. The $1.5 million in redevelopment funds that as a result, that was a real fight in Columbus. We were the only racetrack that were not eligible for the redevelopment funds.
And I'll give Commissioner Jones a lot of credit on that one. That's what she did.
At the time, it was Commissioner Young and Commissioner South and Commissioner Aris. We worked together to get that remedied. There is a lot of taxpayer dollars that have been put in there, and it's like, I hear you, like you all are trying to right this ship, and I appreciate that. It's long overdue. But it's also a time for us to evaluate whether or not, what it is makes sense, because you had made the comment that all 94 acres were for the running of the fair, when in fact there are parcels of that aren't used for the fair. In fact, we pay taxes on those. So we have something to say about how that site would be developed. The idea around the $3 million event center was not for the fair, was to provide a revenue stream to do the fair. So I question whether or not that should continue to be under the operation of the fair board, since the revenue stream is very limited. So I think it's also incumbent upon us to have this conversation about, okay, what is it that really is being utilized for the fair or is needed to help support and underwrite the costs of the fair? And how do, you know, because I'm not interested in taxpayers subsidizing horse boarding, for example, or anything else. So I also hear people complaining about the event center and talking about how expensive it is to rent it. So it's like, I don't know, I can't tell from your financials what, as a business enterprise, what's there, so we need to understand that. But I do think that we have to have an honest conversation about what is really being utilized for the fair and what isn't being utilized for the fair, and then how do those two things work together, so that we can ensure, yes, that the fair continues to operate out of respect for the tradition. We are unified with you behind that common purpose. But at the same time, we recognize this is a taxpayer asset that has not been managed well by the fair board. And so as you all are seeking to put your controls in place to better run your business, it's appropriate for us to do the same thing as it relates to our asset, in my view.
So can I jump in here for a
I
minute?
hate to ask this question, but I have to. Excuse me.
Could I just make a few comments about that? So I was asking questions about the fact that you have typically more discretion in handling expenses than you necessarily can increase revenue. And so my question was, in terms of your budgeting for this year, because the concern is if you don't have the money to pay a bill, maybe you're gonna do something again like happened in the past. And it isn't this board that caused those problems. It isn't this board that currently exists that is at issue with the commentary that's been made here today about the negative things or the findings of this audit report. It is this board that has corrected the problems. It is this board that has addressed the problems. It is this board that on a going forward basis has, as we've said and as Representative Magus said, as we've righted this ship. And so on a going forward basis, it's your opinion, a considered opinion, looking at your budget, looking at your revenue, looking at your expenses, that you, if there's some unexpected drop in some revenue, that you can make adjustments so you can still meet your necessary expenses, like with credit cards and utilities. So that was a question I was asking.
Yes.
And the answer is yes. Okay. And so one of the takeaways that I have from this is that A, you've honestly faced the issues. You've honestly dealt with the issues, and you've transparently done that. Second, B, I believe that you've brought in the right group of people to do this. And C, that you're volunteers and you're working hard, and you're to be commended for what you've done. And finally, what my colleagues have presented today is we've made a large investment in this fairgrounds. It has historically been in this location. And we've been dedicated to it, as is evidenced by the fact that we continue to support the fair and to make provision so that you all can run this fairground successfully. And I believe before we make any further changes to anything, that we carefully look at what we do. And this is the first time, to my knowledge, in some time that we've invited you in to speak to us about these audit findings, about the negative things that have happened, and what you've done to address them. And so I want to thank you for coming in today. I mean, this obviously was a lot of work to put this document together, this folder that you gave us. And it's very helpful, and I want to go back and review it with some care, and may have you come in again to answer some questions. But I want to thank you personally for doing this. You know that I've been talking to you, and I get emails from all sorts of people. There's always going to be naysayers here, there, and everywhere. They're currently, as you know, they do all of that with me and my colleagues all the time too. It's just not you all that receive
I
that.
never get an email.
Yeah, I know. I can send you some of mine. So, but any event,
I have gotten a lot in the last week, but they don't share your point of view.
but you know,
So-
but a comment that you, when you get an email, is only so good as its substance and its truth. Anybody can have an opinion. Anybody can say anything they want. But the question is it true? Is it backed up? And does it require action? And what I've seen from you, when the professionals have made commentary, when the professionals have said, this needs to be done, you've addressed it. Now, if there's somebody else that's in your agricultural society that knows something, and they're bringing it to your attention, I assume that you will address it, and that you have addressed it. Is that true?
Correct.
Yeah, and I think also, we keep going back to the audit report. As I read it yesterday, if I remember correctly, the state auditor said something to the effect of, from the horse boarding operation, there's been a history of people not paying, and there's been a history of no ramifications for not paying. And they actually encourage the board to evict people, quote unquote. One of my, and I'll ask the question, somebody had told me that recently, last couple of years, the board tried to evict someone who was delinquent, and again, I'm asking the question because I don't know the answer, that the Lebanon police were called to help with the eviction, and the Lebanon police were told them, this is public property, we shouldn't be involved with that. Did that happen?
I don't know all the details on that. I really don't. I've heard of the case, but I don't know any details. All I know is in 2025, we set a precedence on making sure that, and if you look at our AR, back to our horse boarding, we don't mess around with them. When it comes to that time, they get a letter, and then if they don't pay, they're gonna have to go to court.
Well, it's my understanding that you've taken some cases to
We
small
have.
claims court.
Yes,
And that's something that they didn't do in the past.
correct.
And they didn't do anything before. You also have an adjuster lien, which is you've got a lien on the animal. So if they're not paying it, you can actually take it to a auction sale and sell the animal. You've never done that, but I suggested this at the time in November 5th meeting of 2024. I said, why don't you use your lien rights? You sell a couple of horses, you're gonna get compliance, and you'll probably have people leaving in the dead of night too. But in any event, I think that the evidence you've given to us is you've righted the problem of not getting rent paid and having large arrearages is resolved. You've given us the data, and as Commissioner Jones asked, you've confirmed that data is accurate with regard to the reports we've been given today.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my two follow-up points would be, out of those 2 of the 4 business units, as I define them, the horse boarding operation, we need to see, again, under Ohio Revised Code, we don't have to empower you to run a boarding operation. You're choosing to do that. There's no mandate, correct, Bruce?
Say that again, please.
There's no state code that we have to run a boarding operation at the.
No, not at all.
So that's a discretionary activity that you're engaged in, and what are the financial ramifications? Are those stall rents even close to market? Because again, you're competing with private individuals like Commissioner Grossman that own a horse boarding operation, and are they below market rents? Are you losing money on those? As Commissioner Jones said, is the taxpayers of Warren County subsidizing that? And so that's a question that I really need an answer to. And number 2 is, what is going on with the event center? Again, I've got a personal interest in that. I with Commissioner Jones, it was, in a different role at the time. We very personally connected to that event center, and the entire model that was envisioned and was supposed to happen, providing revenue for upkeep at the fairgrounds, but then also giving a return to taxpayers, just hasn't happened. So I need to understand that better.
And to answer Commissioner Jones, that's why me and Mr. Mag, we ran into this guy on the STEM stuff. We want to involve everybody. We look at the numbers.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea, perhaps. I'm questioning whether or not the Fair Board is the entity to do that. now I get that you all are a new, new fair board. I appreciate the thinking that we have this $3 million asset. How can we maximize this asset to be able to, the idea was, I was here when we did all of this, was that it would not only help to pay your bills for the fair, but to provide revenues to invest back in the property on top of the $1.5 million redevelopment grant that the facility received. So, that to me is an outstanding question of whether, and it's like, look, you have a very small staff, don't even have staff right now, you're not fully staffed yet, you have a volunteer board, and I'm not sure, maybe that was a bad decision on our part to assume that an entity with very little staff or expertise in that area would be able to maximize the return, even if they were self-interested. But that's the question in my mind, is I understand the thinking, that's where I'm thinking too, how do we maximize the revenue in this facility? But I am questioning, not because of you all as individuals, you guys are just the ones that are here in this time and place and are trying to remedy the situation. But I am questioning whether or not that's something that we all wouldn't be better served to have some other entity manage that 365 days out of the year, even considering some sort of revenue sharing that we would want to do with the fair board to be able to conduct a fair. So, that's certainly on my mind. It's also not lost on me that this audit goes through fiscal year 23. So we still have fiscal years 24 and 25 that will need to be audited. I don't know what's going to be there. I say all this to say, I am not interested in continuing to provide additional resources on top of the things that we already do, at least until we have clean audits and better financial statements. And, so it's I believe your intention, but it's incumbent upon us, in my view, to ensure that the execution is there. And again, it's not motivation or intention. I'm not questioning that at all. It's getting to be a bigger and bigger operation, and you still are a volunteer board, and you still have part-time people, and there's still some issues there that need to be resolved. So that's where I'm coming from, and I want to be as transparent about that as possible, because I know you're planning for the next fair already, and so I want to be respectful to you all, to be clear about what the intentions are moving forward.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Jones, from my perspective, there has been a history of, and again, not with this board because this is our first interaction with you, but we run the fair, this is our facility, these are our grounds, we kind of don't care what you say, but then, oh, by the way, we don't have any money. We can't operate the fair. Commissioners, why don't you write us more checks? Why don't you build us an event center? Why don't you pay for our security? Why don't you do these things? So they're playing hardball with us of, we don't have to give you that, we don't need to do this, but yet at the same time, they turn around and ask us for money. And that's not going to continue in the future.
What I don't understand, though, is this, is why we would suppose that there is going to be a problem. There could be a problem with the years in which they didn't run this. But they've looked at it, because they've now carefully looked at it, and they haven't found anything themselves yet. So, and given the fact, and this is what I think is remarkable about this audit report, is that there was no graft, there was no theft, there was no, there's no malfeasance in this document. There is perhaps nonfeasance, there's negligence, because they didn't, but what didn't they do? They didn't pay a credit card bill on time, quite a few times, they didn't do that. To the extent where they had late fees and they had interest charges in the amount of $8,000.
I mean, we're
past that.
we're stipulating to the audit report.
No, I get that, but here's the point that I'm commenting on, is the idea that we would be so fearful that this organization would be doing the same thing. In other words, we wouldn't want to provide what?
Honestly,
That's not it at all.
The
Well,
same
that's not
thing
it
is
at all.
asking the taxpayers to continue to subsidize.
Yes, absolutely.
That's my concern.
Well, I know we're jumping around here, but my point is this. I do not, I consider everything I've heard today to be on the good side. This tells me that I've got a transparent board on this Ag Society that are good people that are doing, and I know that you're not challenging their intention, but I thought I heard somebody.
I'm also not challenging the intention of the previous board for which this is saying that there was no, based on the standard you've set up,
It's not a standard that I've set up, it's in fact what was found.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, I'm not placing any ill will against the previous board either. I mean, there's obviously issues that came about, and then this new board is dealing with the responsibilities around that. But, look, a week before the fair opens and you don't have insurance is a big problem, and you come to the commission and we have to, front load that. Like, there are a lot of things that I think it's incumbent upon us. I'm just not willing to say, because you're a new board, we're gonna forget all of this history and just say, okay, we trust that this stuff is going to be better managed. I think it's incumbent upon us to utilize this opportunity to say, what are we really, what are we willing to do, not willing to do? How do we have better control over the property that is taxpayer property? It's not fair property, it's taxpayer property. And with all due respect to the Ohio Revised Code, I know what it says, and the land that is, used for the fair, you all can manage that. So that, I'm not disputing that, but there is a lot of land that we've allowed the fair board to manage that is not used for the fair directly. And I think that's a legitimate conversation that we should be having in the interest of all the taxpayers. That is not to say we are not unified behind the common purpose of having a fair, or even giving the benefit of the doubt to this new fair board that wants to, is genuinely trying to do things better. But I think that that's on us as the owner of the whole 94 acres to really understand. I mean, we pay taxes on some of this. I mean, we have sold parcels of the property from time to time. I mean, we have a responsibility here too, and I'm just saying, I want to be clear about what, at least from my standpoint, is wanting to really understand what our role is in this. So with things like the boarding, for which I can't see based on the financials that you presented, I can't see clearly what the real opportunity is there. And is it something that's actually a drain on the ability to have a fair? Or is it additive to it? Like, I cannot see that based on these financials. So it's those sorts of things that I think now's the time for us to have that conversation, to know, here's the definitive, fair property. This is what's gonna be dedicated to the fair. This isn't. How do we develop that in harmony? And I use that term not in like, to redevelop the space, but just to develop it. You know, we've talked about park, we've talked about lots of things. There's ways to do it in a way that's appropriate. I'm just not, you know, what I don't want to do, Commissioner, is be okay in an environment that may actually not be, you know, setting them up for failure. Because they've got very little staff here. They have no staff right now to actually run an event center, let alone prepare for a big fair. That's the issue.
All right, well, and these are all fair questions, but what I hear, because there's very specific so obviously we had this audit, I think that that's been answered. One, it's not as serious as it could have been, because there's no graft, there's no theft, there's none of that. There is a failure to pay some credit card bills, and there's a failure to pay some utility bills, and there's some additional charges because of that, which is gonna be recouped by the Agricultural Society. The Agricultural Society has paid all these bills. They paid all the credit card bills. They've paid all the arrearages. They've paid all the charges. They've paid all the late fees. They've paid all the interest. And now they've got a decision that the people that were responsible for that will pay you back. Second off, on a going forward basis, it appears that you have corrected the deficiencies in both documentation and reporting and how you collect records so that these things will not happen again. Next, it appears that you have addressed the very issues which I am most familiar with, which is horse boarding operations, manure. I spent a lot of time getting rid of manure in my day and doing all sorts of things for horses. But it appears to me that you've righted that ship as well. And that is proven by the fact that we don't have a $50,000 arrearage of people who are not paying their rent and are not, and apparently had no intention of doing it as long as it wasn't being collected. And you guys have taken people to court, you've gotten on top of it, and you have very minimal amounts of, you know, accounts receivable that are really in a late position. And I appreciate all of that. And to me, what has been established today is that this group is doing the right thing and he has a bright future. And I am not worried so much that I would not give some benefit to you for the current fair that's needed. I don't even know if you're asking us for anything this year for the fair. I'm not familiar with that.
Well, they are, it's in their budget. They're
Okay.
asking for
What are they asking for?
For
Some
money for security.
Okay, so what is that amount?
They have in their budget $40,000.
Okay, so, and that would be a provision where we provide an overtime set of sheriff deputies, is that it?
Right.
Okay, and in the past?
No, we reimbursed in the past.
We reimbursed it.
Yeah.
So is that the issue that's on the table for us?
I don't know if that's an issue I'm putting on the table, but I don't know that it's.
I think we're hearing, at least two commissioners ask the Agricultural Society for something. So if you could make it very clear to them. I think what I'm hearing the board ask the Agricultural Society to do, and they're talking about having a new accountant working for them, is they want some segregation of financial information for these different business ventures. We want to know, we want to see just the financials for the horse boarding operation. Separately, we want to see just financials for the event center operation, at least those two
Yes.
things.
So to Bruce and commissioners, I would like to ask if we could come back in 3 months after the second quarter. We'll separate the four entities as best as possible. That way we
You
can,
know, right before the fair, are you saying? You saying
Yeah, well,
after the second quarter?
after the second quarter. Well, we're trying to make sure that this thing is going. If we can do it after the fair, give us a little more time, that would be
I mean, I can
fantastic.
appreciate that moving forward, but you can't segregate the business entities for even the fiscal year 25?
I'm sure we can go back and do it with that. I'm sure we can, but it's gonna take some time.
Look, I mean, again, I appreciate everyone's tenor. It's a reasonable discussion. These are complex issues, and for some people, they're emotional issues. You know, there is a long history, and people are so tied and they're committed to that piece of property. But again, It's not the few thousand people that have, you know, a direct connection to the fair or the property or that location. We're trying to look at the 250,000 people of the county, and that is a 94-acre asset of the county. So how do we best utilize that? And having the fair there, you're not hearing anyone saying, let's move the fair. You know, okay, we're gonna give that another chance, because again, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Representative Magg and Mayor Brewer. They're coming up in front of me and telling me and making certain representations that they're doing certain things. So be it. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Nothing against the other board members. I've never met you. And so I know them, and they're telling us in a public meeting that they're gonna do certain things. I take that very seriously, okay. But that doesn't lessen, especially what Commissioner Jones is talking about, there has been this, we're gonna go and do our own thing, but then we're gonna come and ask you for money. And we're in control, and then we're gonna go and ask you for money. That doesn't work with me, especially anymore. Because honestly, I had the same discussion with the board in 2011, I had the same board with 2017, and again, I'm not going back and ripping on any of those prior boards. It just didn't work out the way it was all envisioned. And that it is what it is, again, volunteer boards. But moving forward, I really need to understand, and you've heard the majority of the board, we need to see those two separate operations, because we've got decisions to make moving forward of, and I think that's a reasonable thing. You guys are running the fair, you're not event center running people. You know, that's something that's morphed into, and we agree to it, but do we look at that? I'm not saying we end that right now, but that's something that should be looked at, especially in the context of, are you making money on it or are you not? Because the taxpayers of this county allocated over $3 million to that center, and for a very specific reason. Producing income to the fair for upkeep and maintenance, but then also getting a return back to taxpayers.
Commissioner Young and Commissioner Jones, you know, personally, I appreciate your concerns. And you may have pointed out some places that there might be some deficits. But we're going to look into it, as I said, you know. This is, you keep going back, and I understand that. You gotta go look at history to see where you're going forward. However, this board started in August of 2025. We have a different vision. We're going to run it as a business. You pointed out some business areas that we need to look at, and we'll look at them closer. And if they're not working, you know, we'll come back, say, hey, these things aren't working. This is only me, I can't speak for the whole board. They're not working, now what do you want us to do about it? We want to work with you. This has always been a partnership. I think somewhere along the line it kind of drifted apart. We want to bring it back together. I want to bring it back together. I want to see all of you at the fair. I want to see us in here whenever you want us. You have a question, call. We'll answer it, because we want to be transparent.
When is your fiscal year? Is it on a calendar year?
Yeah, this November 30th, December 1st
So
to November 30th.
Okay, okay.
And by the way, I never said that I was in opposition to having separate accounting for each of your resources or where you get money. So this wasn't two against one. I completely am in agreement that you provide that data. And I do believe that it's also true that there are other intangible benefits to having this fair, and intangible benefits to keeping this property all within county control. And also, when it comes to the horse boarding operation, yes, it should be run in a way that you collect your money, you control your expenses, you provide you do the best job in terms of the management. But there's also a value to us with these horses, training here, because we got this Racino down the road, which provides us a lot of money. And so we're providing horses that race there and that practice here. Now, I'm not saying there maybe are other places that they can practice, and they don't have to be in this fairground. But right now, there's a history to this. These horses have been here for decades. There was a racetrack with a grandstand where the harness racing was here. It wasn't down there. And that's why I gave that chronology of this. And I'm sorry if I left something out in 2009 that I didn't remember or know about. But I was doing it based upon what I thought was important to explain how we got where we're at into today. And it wasn't, we were not the ones, this commission was not the ones seeking to sell this property to Lebanon. We didn't initiate that. We didn't pursue that. We didn't go after that. That wasn't what was going on. The pursuit was entirely in the other direction. Now, I don't think that there's anything untoward about that on their part. I think it's perfectly understandable. I felt that way too in 2016 when I looked at this.
Well,
When we're-
and I think the city council has been absolutely clear that their interest was in maintaining the fair on those grounds, even if their interest was in purchasing the property. So, you know, they wanted to maintain the fair too. So I'm not questioning, again, anyone's motivation. I think there was alignment there, but regardless, it's like, you know, you all didn't see it that way, and so fair enough, you're entitled to that, and so we're trying to find out, like, okay, so what's the next best thing? And you're hearing from us that, you know, business as usual is not where our, you know, heads are. We don't think that's in the best interest of taxpayers or the fair. We hear you clearly that it's a new day and that you want a new partnership, and I think that's, you know, an opportunity, and I'm just trying to be transparent about, you know, what my expectation is, at least as a partner, just like you are rethinking the way business has been done previously. You know, I want to do that too, and make sure that the fair board is set up for success, that it's something you can manage, that, you know, is, you know, can cash flow and continue to upgrade the asset at the same time. So that's where I'm coming from. You know, it's not anything nefarious or, you know, untoward or.
So, yeah, I completely agree with our board president, and I think you've heard us loud and clear, we've heard you, and now we just need to move forward. Everybody's saying very clear things right now, and I think giving you a little time to
I think
comply.
The sooner the better, yeah. The sooner the better, but,
Yeah.
you know, I don't think waiting to the end of the second quarter is prudent. I think we have to have a better understanding of those financial units so that.
Well, get back to us when you can on that, you know. I think that you're hearing us, we want to have that information, and we also understand that you've got a fair to run, and you're gonna run it this year. And you're gonna run it, as far as I'm concerned, for the entire future of this county. So, and that's the way the law stipulates as well. And we wanna hold that fair. I am very pleased with your presentation today. I'm very satisfied that you've answered the questions, you've addressed the audit findings. I now understand the public, anybody that wants to listen to this meeting now understands what really happened, what they've really found. And I think we should have confidence in this new board that you're not gonna have these problems in the future. That's my takeaway with it.
Commissioner Jones, could you explain to me, you say we do not use the whole 94 acres. We can't park cars and do things in the woods. So,
No, I understand what parking is needed. I'm not an idiot, but.
well, I wasn't meaning that way at all,
Yeah.
believe me.
But the event center for which we paid for, that was designed so that you would have revenues to fund it. What I'm saying is, when you only have $100,000 showing up as revenues, that leads me to believe that asset that is not used for the fair directly is being underutilized. So I'm questioning whether or not the fair board should actually be the one running that. And if we had a different entity, perhaps, you know, I'm making this up, but the RFP, if we did an RFP, for example, for people who do this professionally to run it, could we actually gain more revenues that would both benefit the fair and support, you know, this asset that the taxpayers, you know, they're the ones that own it. So it's, I'm not looking to shrink it for the purpose of shrinking it and frustrate the purpose of having a fair. I am saying to you, I am unified with you behind the common purpose of having a fair at that location that both recognizes the history, but also respects the fact that the taxpayers own this, and we need to make sure that we're maximizing it beyond that one year fair. And I understand when you utilize revenues from other things on that property to pay for the fair, you know, that's helping you make ends meet. But I can't tell between, you know, this is what it, you know, a budget for the fair. Like, we need to see a budget for the fair itself. What it costs to run the fair, what, you know, revenues come from the fair, and then we see what the delta in income is. Then you can say, okay, we have these other business enterprises. Well, what is sucking from the fair income versus what is adding to the fair, you know, to fill that delta? That's what I don't understand. So it's like, I know we need parking for the fair. I get that. But
I don't think, and I'm sorry, I don't think you answered my question the way I asked it. And I'm not trying to be upsetting at all, but when you asked me, do we use the whole grounds? We do. When it comes to our busy nights at the fair, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, we park cars on the whole.
yeah, and we also, so you understand, we also pay taxes. Taxpayers pay taxes on, you know, part of that too. And so there is a difference in my mind of what is being utilized for that 1 week. For example, parking cars, and how that land is being utilized 51 weeks out of the year, which is why we're paying taxes on some of those parcels.
I mean, you don't need 94 acres to run a fair, period, end of story. Nobody else in the state does that. Do people go and use farms next door and rent out for party? Of course they do. But you don't need 94 acres to run a fair. But fair enough, that's our point.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you, gentlemen and ladies, from my perspective, for coming in. Number one, my main takeaway, same as Commissioner Jones, business is normal. You know, the old way of doing things isn't working for us, not working for you, but we respect our longtime elected officials and their presence on your board. Again, no disrespect to the other board members that I just personally don't know, but you're representing certain sayings and you're saying it. I take you at your word, and hopefully there's a new day.
Well, thank you, commissioners, and look forward to working with you anytime you want us. And we will get that information to you as quickly as possible.
That'd be great. I'd also like to hear from other members of your board too. So I appreciate the ones that were here, but I want to make sure that the entire board is sort of engaged in this new day, as you pointed out.
Right, perhaps a joint work session with our board and their board.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Piece of paper here.
So maybe we'll work with the clerk and get that scheduled. I think that would be good. Thank you all very much for being here. Martin, is there
Thank you, guys.
anything else that you have?
I don't believe staff has anything else.
Great. Is there a motion to adjourn?
And, yeah.
Yes. Thank you all very much.